What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Live Loud Life podcast. My name is Antonio, your host of the Live Loud Life podcast. It is January 11th. I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas season, a wonderful New Year's. And it's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. New Year's and goals and different things like that, but it's not your standard. How do you set goals and different things like that? But it is going to be some advice around that because that is something that has been a topic of conversation for us with a lot of our patients, a lot of our clients, so on and so forth. And the questions they've asked, I think, are really important questions. It's questions that I've had myself, and kind of just talking a little bit about what where my goals are and what I'm kind of thinking about, and laying out that kind of thought process, if you will, and see if that's helpful at all for you. Now, I will preface, I did my mother-in-law is a Strength Finders coach, and for those of you who know Strength Finders, I think it's a wonderful evaluation and assessment tool, and it's one of the many ones out there. You know, the Myers-Briggs, all those types of things. Excuse me, but it gives you these strengths, and one of my top strengths was adaptability. And I did a previous podcast about this, and this just came to mind when I said this, is how your strength can sometimes be your weakness. And for me, this notion of it was almost like this pride point of being adaptable. I could roll with anything and do whatever I want and, be able to, transfer here and there, which is actually a very important thing to be able to do. But I use it as an excuse to not create goals. Let's just see what happens. Now, there's some freedom in that. When you don't want to be anywhere, you don't want to go anywhere, it's not too bad. But as you start wanting to do something and be somewhere and achieve things, using just your adaptability to figure out your way is not going to get you there. And that was a big deficit for me for many, many years that, to be honest, I didn't really turn the corner on until just more recently. And, I don't have like specific metrics on where I've been able to get after I've kind of made those choices, but I've seen it transition over the years, which I think is pretty cool. As far as updates for us, I think this will come out before. I haven't been, let's just jump right into it. One of my goals for this first quarter of 2023 is to start to systemize, create more processes, and try to automate as best as possible my life, right? And again, something that is not a strong suit for me, like creating systems and processes, that is not something I am good at all, 100%. And again, seeing the limitations of not having those things in place, whether it's certain things not getting done in the business or in clients or patients not saying having more stress and different things like that as a result of just not having these systems and processes coming down. It's something I've been talking about and thinking about for a while, but again, it's one of those things my mind doesn't think that way. And it was always a struggle for me to put that down into words, to paper, so on and so forth. And to be honest, it was one I listened to. I love the Ed Milet show. For those of you who have not listened to that podcast before, or any of his content is phenomenal. But he had Rob Dyrdek on there, Fantasy Factory, Ridiculousness, Rob Dyrdek, skater, and it was probably one of the most enlightening and really hit home shows or episodes that I've listened to in a long time. And the way he evaluates his life and his time, more importantly, is absolutely phenomenal. And it got me thinking, right? And it got me thinking of how I can change certain things in my life and how to better system and process and automate those so we can, or automate some of these things so I can get more out of it, right? Because the whole point is that time resource. And that has been my biggest struggle. And so with that, one of my big goals for this year, and again, it's not, I don't have, and I should, right? As they maybe talk about this, is like what do I want to systemize, specific and different things. But for me, it's just taking everything, right? Our business and our life, and really just pouring into this and trying to formulate as many systems that we can get down, because come March, we have baby number 4 coming, and I want to have just a little bit more clarity. Not control, but more clarity and systems and processes around that, so that when we have more things going on, we feel like we're still kind of maintaining that momentum and that groove that we have. Um, and I apologize, that kind of threw me off on that top process, but with that is when we're talking about these things, and this has come up again with so many of the patients, is many people are just kind of like, I want to do these things. I don't maybe have a specific goal, and a lot of this is obviously relates to health and fitness, but this could really be anything, right? It's like we have this direction. I know I want to get over there. I know I want to be able to do these things, more income, more real estate, grow the business, more revenue, improve relationships. But yet it's kind of like, time's busy, this is going on, and I'm making these excuses up in my head as well, because this is the same stuff I'm saying too with some of these categories, right? We're looking at this wellness wheel. I'm trying to better fulfill this wellness wheel up in all avenues, where I tend to focus on just a few components of that and just maxing that out and forgetting there's a balance, equilibrium to that. So sometimes you don't know where to go. And this was prompted, we're many of us are guilty of doing this, right? And this is where it hit home to me. I was listening to, we were at church the other day listening to the sermon at Flatiron Church and here in Lafayette, and Ben was talking about how many of us start, when we start to implement something new with these new strategies or intentions, is things just get out of control. And so bringing this down is like, how do we redefine and kind of hone this in, right? And so the example we use is like, all right, well, January 1st, my wife and I were like, we're going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and we're going to talk about our goals, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to start doing all these things and really just start living this better, fulfilled life, right? And then it starts going, okay, well, if we wake up at 5:30, that's before the kids get up, we might as well work out. So if that's the case, we're going to wake up at 4:30. And while we're at it, if we're going to work out, that means we're going to start eating better. If we're going to start eating better, that's going to cost us a little bit more. So let's go ahead and look at our budget. Well, okay, we're a little short on our budget to be able to do those things, to be able to eat healthier and buy those things. All right, so we might have to pick up like a second side hustle or something like that. All of a sudden, it came down to just like, hey, let's talk about what that next phase looks into. And all of a sudden, you just got completely off track, and all of a sudden, you don't even know what you're talking about anymore, right? There's too many things going on, and this is, many of you can attest to this, right? This is that thought process that goes on. And I'm thinking, I was just doing this today. I'm like, okay, well, then this, and then this can do that. And then if that happens, I'm thinking 10 steps down the road when I haven't even taken that first step. And that adaptability in me, I kind of always lean on that, but I can't think 10 steps ahead. It's good to be, this is kind of an end game, but you're putting that cart before the horse oftentimes, right? And so a few of the goals that I want you to think about, and this is the goal of this conversation, not in general, right, is creating just more clarity of those things that you actually want, right? And asking them the 5 or the 7 whys. Well, why? What about, this, and this? Well, why? This, and this, right? So ultimately for me, right, it's coming up with 4 kids. We've been grinding and grinding in our business, and it's done. I feel very proud of what we've built and where we've been. I definitely feel that it could be further along. There's different things that we missed along the way that we've learned. But ultimately it comes down for me is now having 4 kids, homeschooling, teaching them more about how the world operates and different things like that. So they're still very young, so it's very superficial level, right? But it's just that time factor, right? Again, coming back to that time. And that, like, when you keep going down to those whys, that's it. So like, what would allow me to have the freedom to be able to do that? Okay, well, I'm going to need to be able to generate X amount of revenue to be able to do that. I'm going to need to be able to carve X amount of time out and strategize and put that in, so we can do that. I'm going to need to be able to rely on certain support and different things like that. I might need to hire more support to offload some of that time for all those things that we're doing, right? And just coming back down again to the clarity of it all. And with that, there's this fantastic book, and I apologize. I'm going to look it up here because I do want to give the right thing here. I could type Gary Keller. That's what it is. The One Thing by Gary Keller. I apologize, Gary. I'm always missing. I'm always missing that. But the one thing, right? So the clarity allows you to then boil things down. Is the one thing might be that first step, right? While we want to implement X, Y, and Z, these things down the road, one step, right? What's the steps that you can start making to then formulate the systems or the habits that work for you based on your season of life? And as a side note is this is one thing that I constantly struggle with because I am torn between these thought processes of this contention of life is which I do 100% agree. Life is amazing and it's great. We're bringing another child into this earth. Our family is growing. I'm growing. Our relationships are growing. But yet on this other side, so much of what I follow and are trying to learn about is how to 10x, right? How to get more out of life. How to generate more revenue. How to make more impact. How to create more value to this world. And finding that that equilibrium based on our season of life of how can I push and do this and then still take in and really soak in the contention of I love this life and I'm super content about it, right? um and with that, right, is like that 10x concept is looking at people like, well, success leaves clues, and this is why that Rob Dyrdek episode was so important to me. Is just while I do not have the millions and millions and millions of dollars that he has of just talking about the systems and processes and automations to gain back what that is. And it's going to be different for all of you, right? You might not be able to hire a personal assistant. We're not hiring in a personal assistant, but yet there's other roles that I should be hiring to offload so much of the things that I'm doing that's taking so much of my time and energy away. Okay, so it's a thought. So excuse me. Apologize. So again, going back to that first step. So I'm going to talk about a patient of mine. His name is Greg. So Greg was coming at me. He was just coming off of an intensive kind of, I want to get better at running. I want to improve my aerobic capacity. He has some heart conditions within his family, and I just want to strengthen my heart from like an aerobic capacity level. And he was doing a ton of running, which was fantastic. But after a while, he kind of was like, I'm kind of getting over it. I do know that strength is important. Working on some mobility, some stability issues, flexibility, so on and so forth. And he knows it, and he's had the time because he was running before. But running was easier because he's like, oh, well, all I had to do was like, okay, well, I don't have to think about anything. I'm just going to go for a run. Just go for a run, 45 minutes, an hour. But now, yet, he didn't really know what to go. He knew he wanted more flexibility, strength. He's done lifting before, but yet it seemed like this completely vague concept that he just could not put into like, this is what it needs to be. And this is again what has happening with so many people is just like, well, yeah, but then this, and this, and I don't know how this fits in. So my conversations with nearly everybody when I'm asking about either resolutions or goals or just like, hey, are you planning on changing anything for your health and fitness for the turn of the year? Is just giving some basic guidance on strategic planning to get this done, right? So it's like in his case, and we'll stay with Greg, it's like, okay, well, realistically, we're not running right now because you don't want to run because you got kind of burnt out from running, which was fine. And you want to be able to do some strength training. Realistically, how many days of the week can you get this done? He owns his own business. He has 2 kids, a little bit of property, so a little bit of land with some animals. So he's got, and as they say, we all have the same amount of time. Seasons of like take just different things, right? And he's like, I got 3. I'm like, wonderful. Okay. So let's start as basic as we can. You've done squats before, right? You've done deadlifts before. You know how to do a push up or bench press, and you know how to do some sort of a row or even a pull up, right? And you have some weights, and we're going to do some carries. Classic Jay and John push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, right? I want you to just do those. Don't overcomplicate it with, different movements and different things that look cool and look sexy. We're going to do the basics, and we're going to do the basics well, and we're going to challenge ourselves with the basics 3 times a week. Now, he is a very analytical guy, right? So he talked about, okay, well, you analyze your week on a weekly basis and a daily basis. So when you're setting up your week, time block it out, just like you do with your running, right? This is no different than anything else you're doing, right? It's just finding that time. And you and I both know when we're looking at the one thing or trying to find that clarity and really boiling it down is, okay, well, if we really just take a minute and do that intentional audit, you will know and find out the majority of the time what needs to be done, when it can be done, so on and so forth. Now, sometimes, as I was just coaching with Craig, we need an outsider's perspective. Nothing wrong with just a nutrition coach. Any sort of coach really just has that kind of outside coach's eye and that kind of thought process of helping people navigate those things. You might not even know, and you could ask your personal trainer if he's a good personal trainer and you like him. Hey, I'm having trouble implementing this. It might not even have to do with health and fitness or movement. I have a feeling he's going to have some words of wisdom that might be able to help you. But indicating this, like, this is a good time when some sort of a coach could be super helpful to just help you navigate, to help lay out the plan, and then you can implement the plan based on the clues that success leaves and the repeatable processes and systems that work for you. Now, you're going to do a little bit of trial and error, right? You might try something and be like, this is not working. And then you just, again, you will run to those roadblocks and those speed bumps is just, okay, well, now I gotta lateralize. I gotta come over here and I'm going to do it that way. I have to change the time that I do it, so on and so forth. So it really just, again, depends on a number of different factors, but boiling down, right, is helping more than anything is gaining the clarity on those things that you want to do. So I personally, I have not thought, I have ideas about what quarter 2, 3, and 4 look like for this year, but like my sole intention and focus is so that I don't get overly bogged down is focusing on those systems and processes with still a little bit of the content creation of trying to produce value, because that boils into it, right? If we're creating a system around content generation, how it's being put up, I'm still going to create that and figure out how our system's working to get that done for us, right? Because we don't want everything to just shut down as we're focusing time and attention over there. And again, it's a pretty broad spectrum, right? Systems and processes, like that, there's something for everything that we're doing, right? And we're starting with the business, and there might be a few things that we're going to have to figure out with family and whatnot, but realistically, we're not too concerned about that, because as the 4th comes, there's going to be just an adjustment period, and we're not going to stay super rigid on anything about that. So I hope this was super beneficial for you guys. Again, if you don't know where to go, success leaves clues. I guarantee there's someone in your life right now too who you look up to, you respect, in your gym, a family member, a practitioner that you see that's doing things already that you want to be able to do, or is living in a way that you want to be living. And all it takes is a question, right? You might have to hire them. You might have to pay for their time. You might have to provide some value to them. But it's just like, hey, the conversation might simply go, hey, I really like how you're doing this, or I'm amazed at the fact that you're able to do all these things while still doing this. And this is something that I find would be super useful for my life. I just can't figure that out. Can we chat about that? Right. And that's how the patients approach us. We kind of like help prompted too, because we want to encourage people to live that loud life, and they sometimes need a little bit of a boost and encouragement. But again, successfully cues, looking for those repeatable processes and systems, finding that clarity and boiling it down to the one thing, right? And then being able to put that into that machine and just let it turn. And again, auditing it. I don't know what the KPIs would be, the key performance indicators. Those would be completely determined by you. But is what you're doing actually creating results? Because again, you might have to tweak and change things up. Right? If it's weight loss, you might just be okay. Well, the only thing I could realistically do right now is work on my diet based on kids, work, travel, commute. Adding a 45-minute workout in every day is just not going to happen. So I'm working on nutrition. Okay, well, if you're doing good on your nutrition goals, but you're not hitting your weight loss goals, you got to add something else in. You can't only make it nutrition, right? You're gonna have to add some other elements in. Even then, it might be okay. Well, I'm just doing aerobic training. I'm just running on top of eating well. I'm not seeing those weight loss goals yet. Okay, well, you might actually need to add some resistance training, building up some muscles to help increase your metabolism and just increase your lean body mass, right? Okay, well, I'm not reaching my goals yet. Okay, well, we might actually have to bring in a nutritionist or someone who understands hormones a little bit differently to see if there's anything that might be throwing off your weight. Either way, just because you didn't hit that goal, which was an interesting thing because I heard this today on a different talk, is oftentimes they talk about we expect to hit our goals, right? We set realistic goals because we want to be able to check it off. But in reality is oftentimes our goals should be larger than that so that it pulls us in that direction of making these habits and changes. So for instance, this individual, well, we started eating better. We started implementing exercises. That exercises include aerobic capacity and strength training. Oh, we actually learned that we might have a hormone imbalance. We're actually able to attack that. Even though you didn't hit maybe the weight loss goal and the number on the scale that you wanted to hit, you made drastic changes within your life that will have positive effects, not only today, but years down the road, and maybe in your family itself, because your kids or or a brother or sister or a relative was watching the work that you were putting in and then making positive changes themselves, right? So I think that's a fantastic thing to be able to share with other people. You can share your journey on the World Wide Web, as they call it, on social media, blog about it, film about it, and so on and so forth. So I hope this was helpful for you guys, especially if you don't know maybe where to go. A few of just a couple thoughts to think about, a couple questions to ask yourself to mull around, and hopefully provide you a little bit more clarity on that. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Live loud.